Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, that subscribe, and maybe that cheeky notification bell too. And let's crack on with today's first story. Much love, guys. Now today's first story comes from the Am I Overreacting subreddit from Perfect Track 3647, and it says, Am I overreacting? Wife refuses to take her allergies seriously, so I kicked her out. Last night, my 33 male wife, 33 female, came home from work and pulled out a container of something I wasn't familiar with, and she sat down to eat. She works at a grocery store, so I normally don't think too much about it, but when I got a whiff of it, it smelled like crab salad. Now, for context, wife has a pretty intense allergy to green and red onions, but is fine with yellow and white onions. Now, in America, we do have ingredients listed on packaging, which is required by law. However, companies are allowed to be vague with certain ingredients, and onions are one of those. Normally, if I'd spot onions on the list as an ingredient, it's a hard pass for me. I don't even chance it. My wife, however, doesn't do this. Back to last night. I got up and asked to see the container, which was half gone at this point, and read the ingredients list. Onions, plain as day, were listed at the top of the ingredients. I asked her if she bothered to read the ingredients, and she said she did, but assumed they were the safe ones. At this point, I grabbed the EpiPen from her purse, which I feel the need to add, but she only started carrying an EpiPen and Benadryl because I badgered her for a couple of years about it when we started dating, and kept it close by. I was upset because I used to work in the kitchen and I know damn well that green onion and seafood are almost inseparable in those salads. But I kept a calm demeanor and just watched her. Within a few minutes, she started having a reaction. At first, I wanted to give her the Epi because she had eaten so much, but she refused and said she would just take some Benadryl and lay down on the couch. Eventually, she needed to be given the EpiPen and I drove her to the ER. Keep in mind this has taken place at about 12 AM and I work at 8 AM. We get to the ER and they admit her. They tell me that she needs to stay overnight for observation because of how severe her reaction is, and I talk to my wife about it. We know the staff here pretty well and I know she is in good hands, so I checked with her to see if she would be okay if I went home to get some sleep before work. She said it would be totally fine. However, as I was leaving, I chose to call her mum and ask if my wife could spend the next couple of days at her house. You see, I was furious with her at this moment because I felt like I am the only one who takes the allergies seriously, and I'm not the one who will literally die if I eat the wrong onions. And this isn't the first time she's been careless and ended up needing to go to the hospital because she had a reaction. There have been many times before where she just ate first, asked questions later, and it frustrates me to no end that she doesn't take it seriously enough to take a moment to read the ingredients and just avoid onions she cannot plainly identify. So since I wasn't getting through to her, and the hospital visits seemed to be ignored as well, I decided that making her stay at her mother's for a few days might send the message. I got home, packed her a suitcase for the next few days, and when I got the call that she was being discharged at 7 this morning, I picked her up and drove her to her mother's house. I told her as I was dropping her off that this wasn't permanent, but I needed a couple of days to cool down, and she needed to be monitored anyway, since she'd just got out of the hospital, so this was the best course of action. She cried a lot, begged me to take her home instead, but I refused to budge. Her mum brought her inside, and I told her that I would be blocking my wife's call for the day while at work, so if there was an emergency that she would need to get a hold of me. Her mum agreed and told me that this was probably the best idea, since she was just as frustrated that her daughter seemed to not be taking this seriously. So here I am now, at work, feeling like I might be overreacting by kicking her out for the next few days. Did I? Opie then came in with an edit within the same post and says, so I realized after reading a few responses that I might seem a little heartless here, so I want to clear a few things up. I'm only blocking her calls during work because it's a double shift and I need to be fully attentive to my work. And since I didn't get any sleep, it's going to be challenging enough as it is. If there is something serious, her mother can and will call me. Second, I packed her favorite things and I'm having her favorite dinner sent to her mum's house tonight, so she is well cared for and not just being abandoned. I would never just abandon her. And my frustration comes from a fear of losing her to something as avoidable as an allergic reaction. I also picked up an additional shift for tomorrow to make up for the time she is missing from work, so she won't have to worry about the missing hours. I am and will always support her, but this is somewhat of an intervention for her as well. Now, I totally get OP's fears about his wife in this situation, and I was kind of in two minds about the whole kicking her out thing. Is it the best approach, etc., etc.? But I think it was the best in that situation because you were concerned for her safety. You needed to attend work at the same time, so you was ensuring that she was cared for. And he was packing her favorite things, made sure she got her favorite meal. You know, that's all love. But stating the obvious that a serious conversation needs to be had about her being so, cavalier about her allergies, because it felt very self-destructive. And of course, it isn't only affecting her at the same time. They're traumatic for OP, who's having to take her to ER and with the fear of losing her from something that's preventable. But I definitely think that, again, stating the obvious once again, that I think they definitely need to talk to someone about why she's taken those risks in the first place with her own health. I remember in a previous story that we've read before and talking about allergies, and some people almost like rebel against them, like almost a denial of the severity of it, and just want to eat what they want to eat, without these restrictions. But External Muffin says, "Say this, I feel like you're playing with my life too. If you carelessly eat something and die from it, you'll be leaving me behind, heartbroken and alone. When you carelessly eat something that could kill you, you're not only risking your own life, you're risking me losing the one person that matters most to me in the entire world." It might help explain to her. Appropriate Wall said, "I went this route with my husband. We went through a traumatic event and he thought he was utterly fine and was going to go back to work immediately. And he worked with machinery and stuff, so that worried me. I could clearly see he was not himself in this scenario. And why would he be? But he was in shock and just thought he needed to be at work, like always. So I simply stated, please don't go tomorrow. It might be selfish of me to ask, but if something happens to you and you get injured at work because you're unfocused right now, it would crush me. I cannot lose you. Please stay home for me, if not for yourself." He did, and a good thing that was. He totally broke down, and I'm just glad he wasn't in a possible dangerous situation during. It's one of the things that I love about Reddit stories is that you get people in the comments coming in with their own small stories, and it just makes you think. And I know it's just so obvious, but all these things going on in the world right now, everyone's own little stories, if you like. But Bagel says, "Not overreacting. The mental load of dealing with someone who has zero self-preservation skills must be exhausting." Maka says, "Not overreacting. I do not understand why she doesn't take her life-threatening allergy seriously. Does she need some psych help? Is she suicidal? I don't get it. If you know something will kill you, why would you not avoid that thing?" The Blue Cat says, "You're not overreacting. As someone with a severe allergy to peanuts, I'm constantly checking ingredients before I eat new foods. I would never subject my SO or anyone to this kind of behavior from myself. Like, what the fuck?" The response in these comments is kind of shocking too. Maybe put yourself in OP's shoes for a sec. He has love for this woman. If she were to have a severe reaction while she's home alone, eating takeout or something and dies, he's going to be devastated because he loves her. And that's where this is stemming from. What adult ignores an allergy bad enough that they're prescribed an EpiPen like that's pretty unhinged? He's just trying to save her from herself here. There's way too many people in these comments pretending this is something they would continuously put up with if it was their partner. Sometime later, OP came in with her own update and says, "It's been a wild week and I have the time to finally sit down and update you all on what's been going on." So after dropping her off at her mother's house last week, she actually started having a secondary reaction and needed to return to the hospital for observation. They kept her overnight and closely monitored her to make sure she wasn't getting worse. I visited her after work and we talked for a long while about everything. She immediately apologized to me for everything that had happened and opened up to me about what has been going on. My wife has been struggling with a lot mentally. She tends to get sick easily, and up until a couple of years ago, she was dealing with gastroparesis. So for a long time she was chronically ill. But as soon as she cleared one hurdle, another would pop up and she would struggle again. The past few weeks she has been struggling a lot. She isn't in control of her life. She was let go from her last 2 jobs because of downsizing. And so this was like a minor form of rebellion. Normally, if she has a reaction, she could take some Benadryl and be okay. So she told me she thought this would be the same thing. I reminded her the past few times that we had to go to the ER, and she told me she had forgotten about those incidents. She genuinely looked shocked she couldn't remember these incidents, so I believe she didn't. We did speak with a mental health specialist, and she told us that she felt confident that my wife wasn't suicidal, but that she was dealing with a lot, and reminded her that she needs to talk about what's going on. My wife acknowledged this and promised to do better with it. She was discharged and sent home with a short-term prescription for some steroids to help, and I took her back home. The next couple of days for her were hard. The steroids made her feel miserable, and she repeatedly told me that this was definitely the worst she's felt in a long time. I sympathized, but also reminded her that this was pretty avoidable. She made a commitment to be more careful again, and later I was able to see that she was serious. We went out to the shop for Thanksgiving, as we were still planning on hosting before all this happened. And when I tell you that watching my wife meticulously reading each ingredient label almost made me cry, I mean it. My wife isn't the kind of person to make empty promises, but seeing her actually being proactive made me so happy inside. When we passed the seafood section, she flipped off the crabs and I laughed harder than I have in a long time. Thanksgiving came and we went with no problems, and honestly, I noticed my wife appeared to be a lot happier than she had been. When I mentioned this after dinner was over, she admitted that she felt like a large weight was lifted off her shoulders when we had our talk in the hospital about her mental state, and she felt silly keeping all of her worries inside for so long. I ended up showing her my post, and she actually was receptive to it. She did mention that some of the commenters are a little mean, and the ones about me getting a vasectomy was hilariously unhinged, but overall was a good sport. So we're doing well overall now. We want to thank everyone who reached out and all the commenters who were genuinely trying to be helpful. You're a source of grounding for me when things were spiraling out of control. Southbound says, glad she has taken your concerns seriously and making an effort to take care of her health. Looks like your words got through to her. The road to a healthy life is a marathon, not a sprint. Keep that in mind. Barry says, I never saw the first post, but as someone with Crohn's who suddenly had to eliminate a bunch of things from their diet or risk hospitalization seemingly out of the blue after having zero issues with food most of my life. The bit about her eating something she shouldn't as a small act of rebellion makes so much fucking sense to me. There are things I shouldn't eat that I do occasionally just to stay sane. None of them could actually hospitalize me. The worst case would be extreme pain for one night. Obviously, I'm not saying she should do this with something she's allergic to. I want to smoke a cigarette on occasion, but that could actually put me in the hospital, so I settled for a minor rebellion, eating garlic instead. I totally get the thought process though. Good job getting her to open up about all of it, OP. When things get stressful enough that you just want to say fuck it, it's good to have someone in your life that can rein you in. And a final comment that says, as someone with gut issues that does shit like this, but not too repeated ER visits extreme, I can empathize with OP's wife. Gut issues that seem to develop and worsen with age, especially when you discover your tolerance is suddenly way lower than before, sucks hard. The tiny rebellious moment that you know you'll pay for later suddenly turning into a far bigger deal is an even bigger shock as you realize it's probably only going to get worse from there on out. With that being said, the forgetting past ER visits is a hella disconcerting. I really hope OP and OP's wife monitor how her recall is over the next few months. Forgetting a doctor's visit or what food actually triggered a bad time is one thing, but multiple ER visits, even with a history of extensive visits, the memories might bleed together, but typically don't just outright vanish. And I really do hope that they both continue to heal in their relationship. Reading back now, it really sounded like she was calling out for that help in the way she went about it. Do I think it's right? Absolutely not. Of course not. I can certainly empathize with it. And I can empathize with people struggling to talk about their mental health. It's not always easy. I know some people do find it easy, of course, but I remember it took me a long time to be able to do that myself. And part of it has been reading these stories that helps me open up as well. But I'm glad that OP's tough love approach, which, some people said was harsh, other people said not, they totally understood where OP was coming from. It led to that breakthrough where OP opened up about her mental health struggles and what's going on. They've likely still got some way to go, and I hope that they do continue to look at professional help to keep talking about this and progressing forward. But I'm glad that they've come to further understand one another as well. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and let's move on to another story. Now, our next story comes from the Off My Chest subreddit from a throwaway account that says, ordered meat in front of my vegan friend. I, 28 female, have a friend since college, Mia, 27 female. She moved to LA in the last year and became vegan while I live in the Midwest. I'm supportive of her decision to be vegan, but it's overall not for me. So a couple of months back, we were FaceTiming and I was eating an omelette, and she made a comment about, how can you eat eggs? Don't you know how mistreated those animals are? I am fortunate enough to own my own home, and as such, I have backyard chickens. The eggs I ate literally came from the hens in my backyard. I brushed it off as a joke and said, I have my own chickens, right? What do you think, I'm some mobster ordering these hens to lay for me as a protection fee? If they don't meet the quota, I tie them up outside and let coyotes sniff around to scare them into submission. Mia was less than amused and continued arguing with me. I continued to brush it off. So last week I went out to visit her in LA. We hadn't seen each other in over a year. We ended up going out to a restaurant the day I landed, and I ordered a burger with a gluten-free bun. I'm celiac. While Mia started raving about how offensive it was to eat meat in front of her, and what if she was allergic? I told her, but you aren't allergic. My eating this doesn't impact you. Mia left for the bathroom. She came back and everything seemed normal until the food arrived. I thought the burger looked weird and asked the server about it. Apparently Mia went and changed my order to a vegan patty while she went to the bathroom. And the kicker, the patty contained gluten. So she literally ordered something that would have made me super sick if I ingested it. I told the server this was a mistake, that I was celiac and could not eat the burger. Mia started going off, saying I was being unreasonable and not open to new things, and how dare I eat meat in front of her. I told her, you're the one being selfish, not respecting my choice, not to mention putting my health at risk. What the hell is the matter with you? She refused to relent, so I left the restaurant. Mia was blowing up my phone to pay my part of the tab. I used the spare key she gave me, grabbed my suitcase, left the key with her roommate, and hightailed it to a hotel. Now, this is the part where I might be an arsehole. I went to a restaurant near my hotel, ordered a steak, and posted it on my socials. Well, of course, Mia saw it and continued to spam me on every platform imaginable. I ended up blocking her. Some of my friends say that taunting her with the steak was too far. Others agree that Mia was out of line, changing my order. And as always, we have some comments with OP responding. The first one says, and quoting OP, saying, well, Mia started raving about how offensive it was to eat meat in front of her, and what if she was allergic, and then says, then what's the point of going to a restaurant when everyone around her is eating meat? OP says, you bring up a good point. And I don't know, maybe so there was something to fight about or try and persuade those around her into being like her. I didn't really think that deep on it when she picked the restaurant. Davin Mama says, and why isn't it a problem when she eats gluten in front of you? I mean, she literally changed your meal to something you can't eat, not a personal choice. OP says, my issue with gluten arises from eating it. It's not like I'll go into anaphylaxis from being around it, but the symptoms from eating gluten when you are celiac are nothing to scoff at. I agree what she did was really shitty. She tried to reach out through mutual friends and say she didn't know how bad my reaction to it was. Davin Mama replies saying, oh, I totally understand the difference between an allergy and having celiacs. I have it too. I don't think that it matters how bad your reaction is. She knew you shouldn't eat it, especially if she wants you to honor something that is a personal choice on her part. You have a medically necessary diet that comes with a lot of challenges. Just as you don't expect anyone to avoid eating gluten around you, she shouldn't expect anybody to avoid eating non-vegan food around her. It was pretty crazy on her part to change your meal to suit her personal choice, while also acknowledging and dismissing your medically necessary diet, even if she didn't realize how bad the damage could be. OP says, whoops, my bad. Literally thinking strikes again. Like, I get that veganism falls under her core values, but for her to jeopardize my health in the process is beyond baffling to me. She wanted to teach me a lesson. Feisty Cactus says, well, lessons were learned, but not by you. Lol. So OP came in with their update and says, okay, I didn't expect there to be an update on this, but here we go. And then gives a recap of it, but then goes on to the update and says, so before I had mentioned that Mia was reaching out to mutual friends to try and get in touch with me. Specifically our friend Heather, 28 female. And while Heather is a very sweet human being, she's a people pleaser and tends to parrot the last person who spoke to her. Heather lives in town while Mia moved to LA. Heather wants to broker peace as she is very uncomfortable with any sort of conflict. I had Heather over today. She wanted to discuss the Mia situation. I kept reiterating that I'd made up my mind and didn't want to hear it. That if I wanted to talk about Mia and what she did, then I would talk to Mia. So Heather said, well, it's not like all her points aren't valid. I mean, look at your chickens. Opie says, what about my chickens? Background, my dad and I built my backyard chicken coop with an attached run. They also get supervised yard time. There are 3 hens. Well, Heather went on to say, and I'm assuming she was parroting Mia at this point, that it was inhumane and unethical to keep my chickens, especially when I live in the Midwest, and that stealing their eggs robs them of nutrients. And it's not like I'm a professional when it comes to chickens. I looked at her and said, are you a professional cat wrangler? She looked shocked and said, what? Opie said, you have cats, but you're not a professional at it. What do you do when they're sick or acting off? Heather said, I take them to the vet. Opie said, but you're not a professional. Heather replied, well, no, but they're my pets and I wouldn't let something happen to them. Opie said, exactly. Those chickens are my pets. They live a spoiled life. Heather looked away and said, well, Mia said she was going to report you for animal abuse. I took Heather outside to see the coop. All 3 of my girls ran up. I showed her around and asked her if this looked like abuse. She said no. I showed her the meals that the chickens are fed. I explained how I ensure the girls get their nutrients and how I put together their meals. I looked at her and said, what you talk about with Mia is your business. I would hope that you know me and trust me well enough to see that I don't torture my animals. But if you have doubts, I will show you around. I will not be discussing Mia with you any further. I made the choice to go no contact. That doesn't mean you have to take a side or fix things between us. Heather ended up apologizing and saying how Mia sounded so confident in what she was saying that she believed it without a second thought. I ended up feeling so exhausted and still haunted by the ghost of Mia. I don't know how serious she is about reporting me for animal abuse, but there's nothing abusive going on here. I hope she's just spitting venom, hoping that something will get me to unblock her. I can't believe this is the same woman who used to hold my hair in college, and I'm starting to question the level of investment I want with Heather. Some of the top comments on this one said, first commenter says, you can report Mia for trying to poison you since you have celiac disease. OZ Space Cadet says it's funny that Heather is supposedly a people pleaser, but she had no trouble accusing you of animal abuse without being properly informed on that topic. Sounds like she's a bit selective on when she plays nice. Thing says, these types usually pick on the nicest members of the group because they're too scared to cross the more assertive types. Wake in Dreamland says, honestly, you need to reduce contact with Heather. Look how ready she was to scold you. How ready to take Mia's side without even bothering to ask what happened. She's a bad friend. Opie says, this isn't the first time. Heather is very sweet but easily persuaded. Respectfully, I love her dearly, but if there was ever a friend that would accidentally join a cult, it would be her. I've tried to bolster her confidence over the years to encourage her to think more for herself, but ultimately, you may be right. I may need to step back for my own self-preservation. Any Koala says, on behalf of the vegan community, I want to apologize to you and state we did not claim her. Opie says, thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, I felt the same way about Heather after that she's willing to meet up with you and talk all this shit, but I'm sure she doesn't do that with the other person. And she just sounds like she can't think for herself at all. It was just like, but Mia said, oh God. Anyway, what do you guys make of this situation? What do you think about Heather? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now, just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, your support, your time, it always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being involved. And hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.